How to go from a colour image to monochrome was a question recently asked. But does the questioner mean convert a completed colour image or create one from an original raw file? I'm going to assume it's converting an already created colour image. Not all colour images will make a good monochrome. Some colours just don't convert in an appealing way. So if we do pick an image that doesn't convert very well, sometimes it's best just to move on to something else. So let's take a look at 3 different ways to do this, and I'm going to include my favourite last of all. We're looking for a sparkling monochrome with bright whites and some solid blacks. So we have an image with impact and appeal. Now, one of the easy ways in Photoshop, and a good way to tell if your image has potential, is Ctrl-Shift-U. Now, this method doesn't always give very good results, although we can always get lucky sometimes. Another option in Photoshop is to go to Image, Adjustments, Black and White. Now here we can see an instant conversion, and we can turn it on and off here. We can go to any of the colour sliders here and make a change to affect the image. But we do have a number of presets too, so you could select one of these and see if you get a better result. And on top of that, you can move on to the image and click and drag over certain areas and make changes there too. So that's the second way you may want to adjust to a black and white or a monochrome. Now the third way to do this, and this would be my favourite, is to open up your image and go to Filter and Camera Raw Filter. Now, although the image is going to open up into Adobe Camera Raw, we're not going to be working on a true RAW file, of course, because this image has already been saved as a JPEG, but we still have all of the powerful tools at our disposal. Now over on the right hand side in the Basic tab, I would just remove the saturation. And when you think about it, this image started off here in Adobe Camera Raw, so this change isn't that significant. Now the image doesn't look too bad, but I think it needs a little more impact, because what I want is good sparkling contrast, but I don't want to lose highlights or block up too many of the dark tones. 1 or 2 is okay, but not too many. Highlights seem to be visually more important than shadows at times. Now, although we have the power of Adobe Camera Raw here, I am limited in what I can do for the reasons I mentioned earlier. This image has already been worked through Adobe Camera Raw as a colour. And when I did that, I would have pushed the sliders probably about as far as I could, which leaves me not a lot of flexibility now. For example, if I go to the clipping warning for the highlights, you can see I'm already getting a little bit of clipping there. Nothing we couldn't fix, but it obviously indicates that we don't have too many sliders here that we can use that don't make things worse. If I wanted to increase the contrast by stepping the whites up and the blacks down, you can see I do affect this area. It may be insignificant, but what I've done there is to increase the contrast. But the other thing you may want to consider, let's get rid of that, you may consider the clarity. Give that a healthy slug and maybe even a little dehaze. But I think working from an original colour image that's already been through Adobe Camera Raw once, we're unlikely to need or be able to give too many changes here, but I think that looks a pretty good monochrome image. Now, as you can see here, a completely different subject matter, but we've got quite a powerful shot, already been well edited through Camera Raw. But if I take the saturation off, we are left with a pretty good monochrome image. I may want to just darken down the flower on the left hand side and maybe a little bit of the top, but by and large we've gone straight from a colour here to a pretty good monochrome image, but it's the nature of the tones within the image. Now, as I finish with just one more example, I would say that in any other circumstances, if I wanted a monochrome image, I would create it from scratch from an original raw colour image.